Hello, good evening, and welcome to The Majority Show, Scotland's #1 politics chat, broadcast live every Wednesday on YouTube, Twitter, and on Facebook. I'm here with co-hosts Mary Devlin and David Griffiths. What have you got for us tonight, Mary?
Good evening, everyone. Well, tonight I'm going to be talking about the devolution disaster scheme that is Loopy Lorna's Slater's DRS.
Okay.
Oh dear.
A mouthful.
Right, okay. David.
Hi everyone. I will be looking tonight into the SNP government's latest financial projections.
Right, okay, and what have we got? We'll all be talking about this week's news, including the SNP's filing of their accounts. Wow, so exciting. And Sturgeon thinking about stuff as well.
Indeed. And of course, we have the highlight of the week, the Zoomer of the week.
Right, so we'll be back in a moment with all that and a whole lot more for your entertainment and delight. We'll be back in a second. Right, welcome back to The Majority Show. I'm here tonight with co-hosts David Griffiths and Mary Devlin. David, it's been a few weeks since you've been on the show. Can you tell us what you've been up to?
What have I been up to? Well, I've been away for a couple of trips to warmer climes, although neither what place was as warm as Ardrossan today. It's a lovely day. Anyway, so yeah, I've been away to... I was away
Scottish Riviera.
Absolutely right. Oh, it just looks stunning today. It's fabulous. Anyway, I was down in Spain for a few days, which was lovely. Weather wasn't anything like as good as it is here. But then last week, I was down at the Brighton Festival, and Brighton being my old hometown. I lived there right throughout the 90s. And last week, I had the very great honour while down there to meet and to interview legendary journalist, author and playwright Julie Burchill. So this is something.
Yes,
I know.
Hobnobbing with the stars.
Absolutely. So I mean, she's so approachable, very accessible, and we've talked about this a lot, both on the show and in general conversation. In Scotland, there is an absolute void of any real hard-hitting political satirical humour aimed at the ruling government. And of course, you can't go 5 minutes in England without seeing somebody in England having a go at Boris Johnson or Liz Truss or Rishi or whatever. Doesn't happen in Scotland. Well, believe me, guys, searingly accurate political humour is alive and well in Brighton, courtesy of Julie Burchill. I'll just very briefly tell you what it was all about. While I was down there, I watched and reviewed Miss Burchill's latest play, which is called Awful People, and it's a hilarious, very accurate caricature of two middle-aged people who think they're going to write a rap version of Wind in the Willows. I mean, that's how it is.
Okay.
But what it really is an excoriation, if you like, of self-obsessed, virtue signalling, drug abusing Ramoners, i.e. people who oppose, which is a big thing of Julie Burchill's. And it was brilliant. And I can happily talk about her work all night. But one thing I would say to everybody listening, if you're concerned about the fact that misogyny seems a big thing again, if you're concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism, if you're concerned about the continuing nightmare of woke policies throughout the world, not just in the UK, and if you're concerned about the terrible damage that's been inflicted on young people by gender realignment surgery, then you must check out the writing of Julie Burchill, because she's the only person attacking these issues bravely and really, really accurately. So you'll find her work on Twitter under the username @boozeandfags, just as the words are spelled. Plus, really, I would recommend you to look out for her latest book, Welcome to the Woke Trials, How Identity Killed Progressive Politics. I guarantee you'll thank me for it. And if she's listening tonight, and she may be listening to the recording later then, thanks again, Julie. Lovely to meet you. See you soon. Thank you.
She's always had quite a good pulse for like what the ordinary person likes and wants, and really against this kind of elite middle class Guardian reading kind of wokerati type thing, virtue signalling people that she is against. Quite interesting. I did read a review on the play, and it seemed to be quite interesting.
Yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, one of the principal characters, he has an ongoing discourse with a Deliveroo driver who's bringing him a smashed avocado sandwich, and that's exactly that type of thing. It's the huge contrast between the haves and have-nots, but it's very good, and our writing is sensational. So it's great that I've such a strong voice now, is very much on side with most of the issues I think that concern us, including Scottish nationalism.
Well, that's good. Actually, did she have much to say about that?
She did. If you listen, actually, as I say, I interviewed her. If you look on my Twitter feed, you'll see the review of the play that I wrote, and you'll also see the interview. And she mentioned, I asked her specifically what she thought about Sturgeon, the demise of Nicola Sturgeon.
Yes.
She had something very, very interesting to say. It's brilliant. It's just great to hear somebody saying it. So have a listen, guys. Seriously.
Okay, right. Yeah, sure. I didn't know you had that part up already. But anyway, so an invitation to our viewers to have a look at that. Our influence is getting wider and wider. Our tentacles are going around the world in that sense.
Well,
okay.
At least to Brighton, anyway.
Yeah, quite right.
Well, that's the thing. Okay.
So on with the show. As usual, a huge thanks to UK Union Voice and United Against Separation Facebook pages, where many of you are watching us tonight.
And as always, guys, you have the opportunity to like, share, comment, tell your friends about the majority, about the show, and extend our reach at the click of one button.
And as usual, I'll be dealing with all the comments tonight, so please keep them short and snappy, and I'll try to get as many of them up on screen as I can. Thank you.
Yes, already had quite a few comments coming in from all around the world, and we see them. It's actually a little bit because I run the show, as it were, and I don't actually have a chance to really read many of the comments as they come in through the feed, but I see them when they come up on the screen, just as though I was a normal viewer. So that's why you might wonder sometimes why you don't maybe react to them as much, because I've got to do all the show production. But anyway, a reminder also that we have great merchandise for sale in the Majority shop, such as this beautiful Majority t-shirt. We also have caps. We have a mouse mat now, and we have some other stuff as well, so you can impress your friends and annoy nationalists at the same time. Of course, a portion from every sale goes towards supporting our work here at the Majority. Okay, we've got lots to talk about today, and we look forward to your comments. So we'll be back in just a second.
Just a couple of quick comments, if I could just answer. You're right. Leo Keir says very good. You're quite right. It's only fair to acknowledge that Leo Keir is a very good political humanist. You're quite right. And no, sadly, I didn't meet Gordon Smith in Brighton, but I have met him before, and he's a fine chap.
Okay, very good. All right. Some news from ourselves this week. We put out a new article. It's often the case when people talk about constitutional change that they invoke the idea that federalism will solve all of our problems. There's a kind of halfway house between full independence and Westminster centralisation. And of course, particularly if they're Scottish federalists, what they'll do is they'll say, well, Scotland's got 5 million people or 6 million people, so let's split the rest of the UK into 10 regions that have the same amount. And I mean, there's basic issues with this already because, actually one of the things we'd mention in the article is that there's one size fits all Scotland that nationalists are trying to make. Doesn't take into account the different regions. People in the borders, for example, who feel maybe closer to England, perhaps, or at least want to keep good connections with them, or people in the islands, Orkney, all this type of thing. There's all these different people in the regions of Scotland and in the regions of the UK as well, and just trying to force them all into these arbitrary regions is really a bit of an issue. Anyway, so I commissioned this article. It's called Federalism, Nationalist Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. You see it quite like that wee illustration there. And that's by writer Stephen Bailey, who did their previous Devolution series. And this, I suppose, is an extension to that, to say, look, these kind of things sound like a good idea, perhaps, but in practice, they're not really worth talking about. So, just there's so many issues with this federalism. One big one is that, we can actually see from the current constitutional issues with the bottle deposit return scheme,
which I will be talking about later.
That's right. And, it shows that how a regional administration styles itself as a government can make bad laws that affect the entire UK, and then they complain when the UK calls for a common standard. Now imagine that multiplied and multiplied.
Yeah, I thought an interesting point was it would mean that all the easy and popular laws, such as welfare policies and freebies, would get devolved to the regions, leaving the centre, they would only have the hard and the hated laws like immigration and foreign policy. It would just make it really easy for nationalists to say, look how great we are and how much we're being held back.
Well, doesn't that sound familiar? And you can imagine that, as 12 regions of the UK, and would certainly, gang up with each other to start pushing away from the centre. I mean, this idea, of course, the regions would want all the good policies. They'll say, give us all the good stuff. And then the centre's left with all the crap and difficult stuff. And then just say, these big people are just, bastards, basically. So is that, David, any thoughts on federalism?
I've never been a fan. I think this is, to me, this strikes me as Gordon Brown's ideal solution. And I just think it's completely not right for the United Kingdom. I don't believe it's in any way a practical solution. I think, exactly as you both said, it's a recipe for yet more moaning from just more regions now about the dastardly Westminster government implementing unfair, unpopular laws, and it would be guaranteed. Yeah, it would. Nothing is more certain. It would just tear the fabric of the United Kingdom apart because the pressure would be intolerable. As Yeats famously put it, things fall apart, the centre cannot hold, and it's exactly what would happen. So it's an absolute, unequivocal no from me. I'm not a fan at all.
Yeah, a little bit of poetry there always helps the cause.
Yes.
But yeah, I think this is the thing. People, it's give. The idea is give separatists more all the time. It's like, no, let's not do that. Let's take away stuff that they've got. They've proven, if Scotland can show anything, it's a failed experiment in devolution and creating a pretendy parliament as well that wants to impose its laws on the rest of the UK. That's really what's going on here, and that shouldn't be. It's not a sustainable solution, as it were. I think to anything. I think there needs to be rolled back. And if you read our devolution series, then the idea is that the idea that the ability for these parliaments to create laws should be basically taken away, and they should just be money channeling. Well, at the best, actually, they should be just abolished, and the money should just go directly to local authorities. Proper regions that have historical impact and historical legacies that people know where they are. That money should be going, not into a centralised thing.
I've got Nicola here who agrees with you, who says better local government, not federalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Dale, who says the SNP would ruin federalism before it had a chance. In that true? Yeah. However, we've got Davina here who says, I would take federalism as long as the Highlands and Islands were their own region away from Edinburgh.
Yes, it's a good point that to break into different regions, that's a good point. The question then is, another question we talk about in the article is, what happens if there was a ban on secession? Okay, you can do federal. I used to say this actually. You can have federalism, but you need to ban secession at the same time. But you can't just say that. You can't just say you can put a law in that says that. But anytime a region, for whatever reason, or they gang together with each other, work against the central government, they all were working against the central government, giving it negative headlines all the time, then one of these regions is going to at some point get over a certain amount in the polls, and then the UK government would just give up anyway then. So that doesn't make any sense. But yes, restore the council's authority. At least if we go back to a Highland region there, for example, at least not have a parliament on it, just have a council, bigger council. Right, but you already got a council. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But I mean, the article is very good, so I would urge everyone to please have a look at it.
Definitely, agreed.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a read for part of you to get your arguments together for why these apparently good ideas or solutions are not really what they appear to be, and they're actually just a form of appeasement, as I said. Next up, SNP accounts. This is the exciting news of the day. It was announced this afternoon SNP managed to file its accounts before the June deadline. Wow, amazing. Front page news even. And this means that the SNP will qualify for 1.2 million in short money. And this is an interesting thing, although I didn't get much time to think about this, to research this. But, why is this party, any party that's devoted to breaking up the UK, eligible to get money from the UK to break it up? That doesn't make any sense at all.
Exactly.
There should be no short money for any for separatist parties, in my opinion. Anyway, on the back of weeks of speculation about the lack of auditors, finally a small operation decided to take the work, I think it's above a chip shop or something in Manchester, or something, I don't know, whatever. No doubt there'll be plenty of disclaimers. So, David, does this mean the accounts have been audited?
Right. Well, as far as I'm concerned, guys, this is the mother of all rush jobs. I mean, I think I've mentioned this in previous episodes. I had lunch recently with a very old friend who's a chartered accountant and a financial director in Glasgow. He has decades of experience in audited accounts. I've worked with him in some when we worked together. And as he said, you cannot come into a company completely cold, into a business of which you have no knowledge, and approve its finances in 4 or 5 weeks. You can't do it. It takes, as he said, several weeks to pull together the accounts. Now, admittedly, the accounts might be already, if it was possible. But you cannot come in and say, okay, tell me about this, and get answers to all those questions. I mean, pulling together the questions takes long enough, and then you've got to get the answers, and then you've got to go through the answers and know that you can't do that in 4 or 5 weeks if it's a thorough job. You just can't do it. And unless people have been working literally 24 hours a day, I cannot see how this has happened. So as far as I'm concerned, also remember, parts of the SNP, as we are constantly reminded, are subject to an ongoing police investigation, so nobody can say anything. How are they going to tell anybody, auditor or not, what's been spent? They don't know. So it looks like the accounts have been thrown together and subjected to only the most cursory examination. And I'm not casting any aspersions whatever on the legitimacy of the auditors. I'm sure they're professional people. I'm sure they are. No offence intended, whatever. But this just looks like a very, very rushed set of figures. And okay, we'll audit that. Fine. Yeah, okay, there you go. Bye. Bang.
Yeah, the thing is that they've got a professional responsibility or liability, even because they're members, no doubt, of some kind of auditing council, or auditing which must have presumably standards of practice or behaviour, and so they'll have to at least comply with that. Now, probably just full of disclaimers. All right, well, we asked about this camper van, but this is kind of the story.
I think it'll be full of footnotes.
Yeah,
indeed.
As you say, disclaimers everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wouldn't be surprised, I mentioned this term before, if they've qualified the accounts as they do, if they say, well, because there are so many unanswered questions, we have to qualify them. I don't know if that's happened. I haven't really looked into the story of what the accounts say. I think all that's happened so far is, okay, the accounts have been audited and that's it. I'm not sure of anything.
Well, generally,
all I read was actually that they'd been submitted. Have they been audited?
Oh, interesting.
Did it say audited?
Well, they wouldn't have to be audited to be submitted.
Before you can submit them, I don't think they'd be accepted if they weren't audited. I think that's the point. But I'm not.
Here it says here, and Peter Grant, MP, Group Treasurer, confirmed that the annual financial return has received a clean audit certificate and has been submitted on time to the parliamentary authorities.
All right.
Fair enough.
That was it. That's from this one here, BBC News. Woo! Big news. There we go.
I mean, I'm always happy when we submit our accounts on time, so maybe they're just really happy.
Well, I heard it was surprisingly easy. All they did was add the prices onto every item in Peter Murrell's search warrant. Fridge, £1,200. Camper van, £89,000.
Pots and pans.
That's right.
Exactly.
£500.
Lady razors.
3,000 lady razor. Yes, and so on. The list continues 100 pages, apparently, from what we heard. Now, I mean,
everyone's a bit cynical. It'll be 2 pages of figures and 20 pages of footnotes, says Alan.
Right.
100 pages of footnotes, more like, exactly. It's but it shows this shows how low they've dropped, isn't it? Right, that their ability to just do something so trivial as put their accounts in time is front page news. Really, right? Right. We can only. I mean, surely at a certain point they'll come out in public, and then people will be able to look at them. I don't know. Is it just they just see a condensed version, Mary? Is that what we saw last time?
No. I mean, well, yeah. You don't. You see all the different categories, but you don't get to see the breakdowns of how the figures are made up. But I mean, would HMRC, are they going to be having a look at these? Do you think? Obviously, the Electoral Commission, as we know, they have to go through them, but I don't know if HMRC go through them as well.
Good question, indeed.
So, I mean, I think if they're done that quickly, there's bound to be some mistakes here and there. So,
yes, certainly some creative accounting.
Exactly. I would imagine HMRC would be thinking, interesting. So, normally I don't think they wouldn't bother to look at anyone's accounts unless they had reason to do so. But right now, I mean, I'm struggling to see how there couldn't be a reason to look at these accounts because it seems so questionable, all of it. So who knows? Maybe HMRC will do. I hope so.
if you're going to look at anything, I think that's where you'd be
Exactly.
looking.
Right. Okay. Well, okay, it's quite something. Okay, we'll be back in a few seconds with more of the week's news and then Loopy Lorna's last stand. See you in a second. Right, so talking front page news, Daily Record had an exclusive with Nicola Sturgeon. Where is this thing? All right. Okay, here we go. My foster mother's hopes. And that's the has-been First Minister and wife of recently arrested SNP CEO Murray, said she's thinking long and hard about becoming a foster parent. Now, Sturgeon is free to apply and become a foster parent like any other applicant, and no aspersions on her ability to do the work required. But the question is, why is this front page news? As I said on Twitter, are we to be treated to front page headlines every time Nicola Sturgeon thinks of something? Nicola Sturgeon thinks long and hard about buying a camper van. Nicola Sturgeon thinks long and hard about buying an iron. Okay, it's just like so tedious. And someone said in Twitter today, the only headline the people of Scotland want to see is Nicola Sturgeon thinks long and hard about being arrested.
Here.
Well, maybe I'm just being cynical, and I don't underrate anyone's desire to be a parent in whatever way you can, whether it's through adoption, fostering, or whatever you have to do. I mean, a lot of people really want to do that, but I do question the timing here. Wasn't there just last week, wasn't there some article about how Nicola Sturgeon has failed Scotland's children?
Oh, yes.
Right.
There was. Actually, I didn't get it. Let me try and find it.
I meant to look that up myself, but it just, all of these things always, seem to come out. The timing is always a little bit just too neat, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So last week we got the headline that Nicola Sturgeon absolutely failed Scottish children. Yeah. And then this week we're she's trying to rehabilitate herself, and she's thinking about fostering. It's like all those people who were thinking of taking in a Ukrainian refugee or a refugee, but they never quite got around to it. So we'll see what happens. And you do have to wonder, I mean, if one half of the couple, assuming they're still together, if one half of the couple has been arrested, I mean, is that a good environment to take a foster child into?
Very good point, Mary, indeed. To me, this is all about rehabilitation. It's an attempt on behalf of Nicola Sturgeon's spin doctors and her team, because believe me, she still has a team of people, no question. And this is just rebuilding her image in the public eye, because it has taken an enormous dent, massively so. And it's interesting to me, she looks less physically attractive now. When you see her face now, she always looks mean-spirited. She just looks horrible, and I don't mean that to be judgmental. It's just she looks aesthetically a lot less pleasing than she used to do, and she was never massively pretty in the first place. I don't mean that to be sexist at all. It's just her whole appearance has changed. I think that's it. This is what's part of it. It's trying to rebuild all this. It's trying to make her more palatable in the public eye. I mean, there's nothing nothing more corny for a start than saying, I want a child. It's the equivalent. It's the same as in the old days when politicians literally used to pick up babies and cuddle them. I mean, it's pathetic.
Yeah, it seems a bit like that, actually. I wonder, though, a bit about the Daily Record for running this. So this is the thing that puzzles me. And, you think after all this time, all the arrests, all the negativity about the SNP, all the revision of Sturgeon's time in office, which is so many articles saying that she was a disaster for Scottish nationalism, Scotland, and all this type of stuff. And this, for example, this Nicola Sturgeon failed Scottish children. It's like, I mean, our only achievement really dividing Scots, right? In baby boxes or whatever. And then, but then that somehow manages to get in the front page of the Daily Record. You're like, why is that on there? Why are you trying to rehabilitate her? Are you so scared of your nationalist readers still that you don't, I don't know, are you still pandering to them? Yeah. It's like, because,
Well, it's like all the attempts to rehabilitate Janie Godley.
True.
And the newspapers are always trying to do that, aren't they?
It's shocking. There was a thing in the Telegraph ran this thing about her talking, Godley and Sturgeon actually talking this I Write Festival, Nationalist Book Festival, and it never even mentioned once in it that Godley had been kicked out of the COVID campaign because of her racist and ableist and misogynistic and abusive tweets and all this type of stuff. Not misogynistic, sorry. But anyway, everything else apart from that. So,
racist.
It's like, so, and it didn't even mention that.
Nope.
You're like, that's the news. Yeah. Anyway, so I think why do the Scottish newspapers have this idea that they want to rehabilitate these people all the time?
It's bizarre.
No idea.
It's a real puzzle.
Here's Andrew White. He's even more cynical than me. He says judges are reluctant to jail mothers with small children.
Yeah, good point. Oh, I like it.
Well, it is quite weird, isn't it? I think if you're going to foster a child, or you're going to do anything, you do it. And then you don't say to people you're thinking of doing it, whatever. I mean, if it's like public figure, it's like, just do the thing. You don't need to announce, I'm thinking long and hard about it.
True, exactly. That's the thing. If you're genuine about wanting to foster a child, you don't run to a microphone and say, you'll never guess what I want to do. Nobody wants to hear that. Just go and do it if you're going to do it.
Yeah, if you're going to do it, you do it. You don't talk about it.
I think back to the last guy I knew fostered a child. He didn't even tell anybody at work until he'd actually done it. Far less go to a microphone. It's just ludicrous. But it's so see-through, so transparent.
Well, it's certainly, if it is true, then she shouldn't be doing that and getting in the front page of the paper, because it makes people think that it's a cynical ploy. You should just do it. Just do it, and good luck to you if you do it, and good luck to your children and all that, whatever. But there's no need for the big brouhaha. Brouhaha or whatever it is.
That's exactly the right word, Mark. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Right, okay. More than ever, we need your donations to keep the fight going. On days like today, even if it's beautiful outside, we are in here beavering away.
Slaving away.
From morning to night to keep you informed and to amplify your voice. It takes a lot of effort. So we would be very happy if you could donate to the show and to the majority in general for our efforts. A one-time or monthly donation. You can do that by, I think, going to, it says in the bottom there, go to the majority's website and make your donation. You can do that. And with any luck, we will be, if you're watching on YouTube soon, we may be able to do donations while the show is going, if they ever get back to us, which it may be possible. Maybe some good news in that coming up.
We're still hopeful.
We are still hopeful. Good. They did eventually get back to us, but that doesn't necessarily mean that any action will be taken. So please do help us in our fight against toxic Scottish nationalism. Still a long way to go. There's a lot of toxicity out there. Okay, coming up, Mary is going to be talking about the ongoing farce of the DRS, and David will be talking about Shona Robinson, I think.
Yep.
All right, back in a second.
Well, the disaster that is DRS continues this week. Things have been getting very heated over this week, over Lorna Slater's disastrous deposit return scheme, DRS, that we keep talking about. So yesterday in Holyrood, Lorna threw a tantrum and got all stroppy, suggesting that the scheme could be further delayed or even canned altogether, after accusing the UK government of trying to deliberately sabotage the policy. This was all because on Friday night, Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack wrote to the Scottish Government agreeing to partially approve an exemption to the Internal Market Act, the one that they never applied for, but excluding, he wanted to exclude glass containers from the scheme, because this would make the Scottish scheme in line with the rest of the UK schemes, which do not include glass. And the Scottish scheme could then act as a kind of a pilot scheme for the rest of the UK. But Lorna was enraged, and even Humza Yousaf got involved over the weekend with a tweet. Have you got that, Mark?
Yes, there is here.
He says, the Westminster government is not just trying to scupper the deposit return scheme, they're trying to undermine devolution. It's also really poor for the environment. If we don't include glass, that's 600 million bottles that won't be removed from our streets, beaches and parks.
What was that number, Mary? 600 million?
100 million bottles a year.
Right.
That won't be removed from our streets, beaches, and
yes, you don't need to do the calculation because we have a video here.
Yeah, here's SNP MSP Fergus Ewing.
Presiding officer, in the last couple of days, the Minister has warned, indeed threatened, that if the Scottish DRS fails and doesn't go ahead, it would result in littering in Scotland of 600 million bottles. Presiding officer, the population of this country is 5.5 million, that would require every person, every man, woman and child personally to litter 109 bottles on our streets, beaches and parks a year. This obviously doesn't happen. So can I ask if the Minister will withdraw this false and disingenuous claim and instead work with the British Glass Federation in order to build on the excellent recovery rates and recycling rates of glass at the current Minister?
So
the numbers that
Okay. Get rid of her.
well, she's coming up in a little bit. Don't worry.
Right, okay.
So yeah, just bear in mind that he is an SNP MSP.
Exactly, Mary.
Yes.
And he's ripping into what Humza Yousaf said on the weekend and what Lorna Slater had just said in Holyrood. So they're actually being attacked from within because it's just so ridiculous. Now, he mentioned the British Glass Federation, who represent the glass industry. So they released a statement which read, they said, astonished by Lorna Slater's answers to Fergus Ewing SNP and Murdo Fraser today, we don't think the Minister understands glass recycling and offer her again an opportunity to meet with us. So Scottish businesses, just for the record, they've now spent £300 million making sure they can comply with the requirement to handle glass. Wow. And now they're being completely kept in the dark. They don't know what's going on.
Well, nobody knows what's going on.
They're all ready for it. Did you show that headline, Mark, the Scottish Daily Express one?
Oh, okay, hold on. I got that somewhere. So Scottish Daily, this one. Is that this one here, the car crash interview on the S?
No, it doesn't matter. Right, we'll move on.
Right, moving on.
Yeah, so as I said, I mean, what do you think of the SNP guy showing them up?
Well, it's there's many words to explain what a disaster this is. You can find in the thesaurus. So it's just a complete disaster from start to finish. The whole thing has been poorly thought out. It hasn't been applied. The correct procedures haven't been taken. Public consultation has been poor. The industry consultation has been poor. There's been nothing that's redeeming about it at all. And then the cheek they have when the UK government steps in and
tries
says,
to throw them a lifeline.
Exactly. That throws them a lifeline. They say, oh, no, you're destroying devolution. It's like,
well, we're just coming on to that. So, I mean, we all know that the reason that they didn't get this market exemption is because they only applied for it a couple of months ago.
Exactly.
And as I reported last week, there were still parts of the paperwork missing. So Alistair Jack had said last week that he doesn't even have all the paperwork he needs to actually try and make a decision on whether they can grant the exemption or not. But anyway, he tried to throw the lifeline, but Lorna wasn't happy with that. So yesterday, speaking in Holyrood, she stood up, she was all heated up, and she followed up on Humza's lead that he had made about devolution. She says, we are now being forced to examine whether the deliberate sabotage by the UK government leaves us something that we can make work. This is just the latest example of how devolution is now frankly under sustained attack. Mark, have you got the...
Put up with Westminster interfering with our Parliament and sabotaging important policies
Canadian accent,
their agenda. I look forward to a different future where we can have all the powers we need right here in this Parliament to deliver for the people of Scotland, to protect the environment and to build a stronger, fairer economy.
Is that it?
Thank you, Minister. The Minister will now take questions.
Right, okay.
She said when Scottish ministers engaged with... she said when we... Did she say that bit there where we pass laws to make lives a bit easier for trans people? The Scottish Secretary steps in and blocks the legislation. Right. When Scottish ministers engage with other nations, the UK Foreign Secretary issues a diktat to overseas embassies to silence and sideline them. And it's now clear we can't even introduce a recycling scheme without it being sabotaged by bad faith actors in the UK government.
It's just exactly what we were talking about earlier on, this whole this in the federalism thing. They make a bad law. Deliberate, and whether it's deliberate or not, but the end result is they know at the end they can complain about it. So it works. Whatever way they do it, it works for them, right? They either get the law in that's bad and it causes confusion, whatever it is, and all this. Or they get blocked, and then they can complain about it. Now, imagine I said that earlier on. Imagine that times 12. Imagine all these different regions going, yeah, we want a different
deposit return scheme.
Yeah, different. Well, not that. We want a different thing for our beaches. We want a different thing for this. Different thing for roads. We want different road signs. We want all this type of stuff. And people, the place would be chaos. All these different laws and everything. He's like, just leave it alone. We've already got plenty of decent laws. We don't need you interfering with them and then saying, okay, making bad laws and then complaining when you get cut down.
Well, anyway, she was basically shown up by Maurice Golden, the Conservative MSP. Do we have that clip?
Oh,
Mark?
yes, I'm just going to send it. Okay, coming up just now. Okay. Right, okay, here we go. Unfortunately, we have to listen to Lorna again for another 20 seconds first.
Yeah. Put up with Westminster interfering with our Parliament and sabotaging important policies to suit their agenda. I look forward to a different future where we can have all the powers we need right here in this Parliament to deliver for the people of Scotland, to protect the environment and to build a stronger, fairer economy.
This statement, Deputy Presiding Officer, should have been delivered by the Minister for Independence because it is solely designed to pick a fight with the UK government. Anything to distract from the mess the member has made of deposit return. The scheme is on its third delay. Retailers have taken legal action and producer registration was such a shambles the Minister couldn't bring herself to admit how many hadn't signed up for the scheme. I want the scheme to work. That's why I voted for it. It's why I called a debate on it when the Minister wouldn't, and why I've offered solutions to the Minister in both public and private. The Minister has come to Parliament today not to update us on deposit return, but to indulge in an anti-UK rant. She would rather pick a fight with the UK government than support a scheme that works for everyone. She has traded her environmentalism for nationalism. The Minister...
Well said. Well said.
Yes.
And by the way, I'd like to thank Marco Polo. He's always taking the clips and putting them up on Twitter. So thank you for this. Thank you.
Yes, very good. So, yeah, she definitely making a disaster of the whole thing. I mean, this is what it's all about. It's just grievance multiplied, and it's just the whole thing. It's even for this, the core of it, this idea that somehow they're going to save the planet by charging people 20p a bottle to, it's like everyone recycles already. It's the people who litter are the problem.
Exactly.
Problem. So I've lost the thing here. So there we go. The people who litter the problem, target them. I think we were talking about this earlier on in the week, and I think what happened was that some people probably come in, these big companies, multinationals, whatever, came in and they're like, oh yeah, no, we've got this great solution for you here. We've got this. We use this system, use these machines. Our machines are so great, aren't they? You can get everyone using them, and then they force them to do that. And of course, who's the beneficiary? These people.
Yeah,
and they get all the money and everything. So
anyway, the disaster continues. I'm sure we'll have more to report on this because at the moment all the businesses are left in limbo. They don't know what's happening. They've invested millions. So we'd like answers, please.
Yeah.
Well, it says Alistair Jack, I think, not Alistair Jack, Alan Jack says, I remember when Lorna Slater ran out of the chamber instead of answering questions. Perhaps she should run out of the chamber permanently.
Yeah.
That's it. I asked earlier on in Twitter that perhaps we should recycle Lorna Slater, and people say, no, we don't want her back. Really, we don't. Okay.
Yes.
So anyway, next up, we're going to talk about David. David's going to talk about stuff. Right. I'm not going to talk about you, David. We're just going to talk about it. All right, back in a second.
Okay. Here I am, indeed. Right, so last week in Holyrood, guys, we saw Deputy First Minister and Finance Minister, as she's inherited both of John Swinney's roles, Shona Robison, provide Parliament with a financial update. And according to the lovely Shona, the Scottish Government faces a massive black hole in its finances next year. It will be initially in the region of £1 billion, rising to approximately £2 billion 3 years later, and I have to stress as a conservative estimate, in all likelihood it will be far worse than this. Now, of course, Robertson, who is anything but a charismatic speaker, delivered this news very dispassionately, as if it had absolutely nothing to do with her. That's how she said it. It was unbelievable, these numbers. And naturally, of course, as she's a nationalist, she blamed the absence of the levers and the inflation rate caused by the Tories, of course, the cost of living crisis caused by the Tories, and the fact that Scotland is not independent. That was her, if you like, mitigation. Oh, and of course, equally predictably, as she's a nationalist, she concluded by saying, well, of course, the UK government must provide the Scottish government with additional funds, not just for capital spending, but also for pay settlements. Brilliant, Shona. Thanks for that. So she went on to warn that there would have to be a reset in the next Scottish government budget, meaning that there will have to be a lot less money spent on capital projects and on resources, which sounds very, very much like austerity, SNP style to me. Mark, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just... The problem is, these things is like Maggie Thatcher said, the problem with this socialism is you eventually run out of other people's money, and all these freebies don't come cheap. Free prescriptions. Right, free baby boxes, free travel for kids. So I'm alone. That costs £300 million a year, and extra benefits. And I think that's actually the largest part. And I think we need to do more investigation to find out how the benefit structure is sucking money out. I think that's where they're putting the money, really. And we can talk about these things at the edges, but the real core of it, I think, is in there. And then you've got all the misspending, ferries, BIFAB, Gupta, whatever. It just goes on and on and on. And, at a certain point, you run out of money. And in this case, other people's money is the UK taxpayers' money, which is basically money from London and in the southeast. And that money is being either wasted or misspent here. And it's not being spent in other regions as well. People in Liverpool and in north of England and Wales, whatever, and Cornwall even, they're not getting the benefit of this money. So it's just been sucked out of the UK economy by these incompetents. And just really, they have no clue what they're not interested in good financial management at all. It really is shocking.
And then you've got the Greens who are against economic prosperity. So.
I'll come on to that later. As a really, really important point you raised there, Mary, that's so true. And of course, they're going to almost deliberately sabotage anything that could go well and just say, "Oh my God, we didn't want it to work anyway because it's killing the planet." What? Oh, nonsense. Anyway, but interestingly, after the update was given, it was notable that Robson just couldn't answer even the most basic of questions because she's got a script. And as Murdo Fraser, he actually wrote something halfway worthy for once. He said she has little grasp of her brief, but a white knuckle grasp of her advisor's notes. And that's all she's
That's good. That's actually really
good. Murdo, first thing he said sensibly for a long time, Rangers win the league, I think. Anyway, but what he did also go on to say was a Scotsman article, because he writes opinion pieces or he writes articles in the Scotsman now and again. Her only qualification for her latest job appears to be her loyalty to Yousaf and her role in delivering him the SNP leadership rather than an ability to perform. And he's spot on, I've got to say. I'm not his biggest fan, but he's absolutely right. He also, as Murdo Fraser pointed out, Robertson's lack of any financial background. And this is an absolutely crucial point. It's one I used to make a lot when I worked in IT, because I've pretty much worked a whole career in IT. And in the early days, in like the 70s, late 70s and early 80s, people didn't really understand what IT was going to do for them. They were a little bit frightened of it. So they always used to have IT reporting to the finance director, always. And then as companies began to understand IT a little better, that practice would stop. But absurdly, it all happened again in the early 2000s. IT would report into the finance director again. And any time I was working at a place, if this happened, because I was quite senior, I would say, okay, that's it, I'm leaving, I'm not doing this, guys. And the reason I said that always was the same. It's because the rationale is, if you have someone in charge of a discipline who doesn't even understand the questions, far less know how to give you the answer, then disaster will inevitably follow. That's it. And it's exactly where we are now. The Scottish Government has got the absolutely hapless Shona Robertson as finance minister.
So, actually, yes. Okay, yes. Oh God, that's terrible. I mean, why?
Yeah.
Myself looking at the internet a lot at the moment and just going, but why? Almost every post, and a lot of that's the national stuff. There's a lot of other stuff out there. You just think, what the hell?
Exactly. So, I mean,
it's the same thing.
That's true. So when you've got a finance minister at a time when finances are extremely facing real hardship, what can she bring to the job other than a complete lack of understanding of any of the issues facing the Scottish economy?
No.
Never mind the answer. So where is it? Where do they imagine this is going to go? I mean, it's unbelievable. So I cannot see any other eventuality here other than Shona being slowly, quietly pushed aside and replaced with somebody halfway competent. And I suspect the very same will happen with her boss, because I'm hearing a lot of whispers about votes of no confidence from the SNP. They know where this is heading under these two Muppets. I mean, there's no doubt.
It's I said before in the show this is like Scotland, if you think of it as a corporation, and certainly in management terms, it's huge. It's got a huge budget. It's got tons of moving parts. It's got loads of things. And these people who've worked, and we know people like this, who've worked in multinationals their whole career to get up to the top. They're working constantly. Even now, they're just working all the time on, every little detail of the business. It takes a huge amount of effort, knowledge, qualifications, and so on. And what they've got, Shona Robinson.
Exactly. It's beyond ludicrous, guys.
Well, there's another point. I mean, apart from Shona Robinson, I've actually have my doubts about the civil servants these days as well.
Yeah, well, yes. Well,
I mean, because I think what's supposed to happen is that the whoever's the ministers or the MSPs or whatever, they're supposed to be supported by the civil service, because I mean, it's quite often the case that you can have somebody who has got no experience, for example, in the health service, but then they become, say, the health minister.
Yes.
And they're supposed to be supported by the civil servants, aren't they?
Yes.
I have my doubts about them as well.
Well, that doesn't send all the duff ones over to Scotland.
It sounds like it. Somebody here asked, isn't there a team of experts telling them what to say? I don't think there's a team of experts in the whole of the SNP.
It makes you feel bad about the ability of Scottish people to manage anything.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sad to say that as well.
It's sad but true. And I know that from personal experience, you'll know the guy I'm talking about from the Indian Council of the UK, who recently announced a big initiative investing a lot of money in the UK economy. None of it's coming to Scotland. These guys are not going to invest in Scotland right now. Not a chance. Why would they?
No,
well, Nicholas says, if Scotland were a business, we would be on the verge of bankruptcy.
Well,
we'd be insolvent.
Yes,
definitely. I mean, we don't have enough money coming
in.
in.
Great segment there. David, lots to think about as usual. Things you can do to support the show. You can make a donation to the majority. Great, one time or monthly would be really helpful. You can buy a t-shirt or a mug. I actually have abolished Holyrood mugs on store now. You can subscribe to the show on YouTube. If you can, please like the show now. If you're watching on YouTube, like it. That gets us higher up, gets more views. Of course, you can always tell your friends about us, and you can do all of the above, which makes us very happy. Now, coming up is the highlight of the week, the moment you have all been waiting for.
Yay.
It is Zoomer of the Week. Right. My nomination for Zoomer of the Week is Annie Glen, who describes herself on Twitter as a Scottish Republican. Well, Annie was in her local Sainsbury's, and right there in the fresh produce section, she saw the worst thing in the entire world. A mouldy banana, an overripe pear. No, it was a punnet for strawberries.
Was it a tarantula? No.
No, sir. No insects involved. But not just any strawberries, British strawberries. This is her thing here.
They didn't have a union. Oh my God, they did.
Yes, they did.
They got a Union Jack on them.
Heaven forfend.
So Annie got angry and wrote a note to Twitter. Hey, Sainsbury's, these strawberries are not by you. You didn't.
What?
You didn't grow them.
You didn't grow them?
Yes. And they are not British.
Okay.
They are Scottish. Angus is in Scotland where the best strawberries are grown. This is the flag of the country where the strawberries were grown, then 8 saltires. I think it's 8 anyway. I don't want to take too long to get.
One for strawberry, maybe.
Right. Well, Annie, it may surprise you to know that, in fact, Angus is inside Scotland, which is inside Britain. So are these are, in fact, British strawberries.
Yeah.
But that's not really the point, because the point is, how did any person become such a fool that they rejected the geography of a country and get upset about flags on fruit produce nationalism, of course, making fools take pride in stuff they didn't do while getting angry at outsiders actually doing stuff.
Yep.
So anyway, nationalists would have us only eating Scottish strawberries, of course, pure good Scottish strawberries, Angus beef, and I was supposed to fill in other Scottish products here.
Tunnocks tea cakes?
Yes. No, you're not allowed those.
Oh, no, you can't, because
they've been boycotted, haven't they?
Too pro-UK, aren't they?
Yeah.
What else is there? Stovies, I don't know. Who makes them?
So you can eat Stovies, yes, that's fine. That's good. I don't think that's off the list. That's how homemade, isn't it, anyway?
True, yeah.
Yes, but there are no tea cake, absolutely not.
Sorry for mentioning the
no
tea cakes.
Walker shortbread, no Baxter.
I don't want to trigger anyone. We should maybe put a trigger warning up on the show. You may get triggered.
Yes, I'm not sure what's left after you've got rid of the tea cake.
Someone's called it a strawberry tart.
I
think that's what she means, or maybe she's saying strawberry tarts are Scottish. I don't know.
Well, let's have a wee look at that again. And underneath, some helpful person, another nationalist, take note. And the Sainsbury's take note.
Yes.
And there they put the correct flag on there. Oh, and they'll actually change it as well. Say Scottish strawberries.
Oh, no.
Right. Okay. Well,
here's a good comment. It says, "Why doesn't she feel so upset about shopping in an English company supermarket?"
Yes, well, that's
Isn't that hypocrisy?
That was one of the points. And there's another interesting thing. When I was reading about this, someone said that this strawberry variety, you can maybe see it in the packet. Well, you can't really see it there. It's called Malling Champion, a variety that was developed in East Malling, which is a town in Kent, right? So Kent, for geographically challenged folk, is in England. So technically, these are actually English strawberries. So we could say that they're English strawberries grown in Scotland, sold in an English supermarket chain to Scottish shoppers, or we could just say they're British strawberries and tell morons like Annie to F off. So she's my Zoomer of the week.
Indeed, harsh but fair, I think, guys.
Right, okay. Very good. Okay, next up, it's going to be David. Where are we? Okay.
Okay, guys.
Sorry about that. I clicked the wrong button.
Double intro. Anyway. Yes, so this week's nomination, slightly unusual because it's not a nationalist figure. My nomination for Zoomer of the Week this week is UK Labour leader Keir Starmer. I saw a couple of comments aimed at this earlier, so guys, listen in. It's been a poor few weeks for Starmer. First off, he announced at the weekend that a Labour government would refuse to sanction further oil exploration in the North Sea. Now, this comes in the back of Labour announcing that they would look at the Conservative government's new tougher laws to protect the public from disruptive protesters. Now, as a reminder, Labour voted against these measures when they were first introduced in Westminster, as did, of course, the Greens, the Green, rather, there's only one of them, and the Lib Dems. Now, these anti-disruption measures caused a lot of debate recently when more than 60 protesters were arrested during the coronation of King Charles III, and a lot of anti-royalists thought this was dreadful. Now, bizarrely, Labour's come under pressure for its stance on these laws, not from the Conservative government, but from the Greens and the Lib Dems. Caroline Lucas said she believes it's chilling that Labour has stopped short of confirming that they will repeal these additional stronger laws to stop protesters disrupting everyday life. And the Liberal Democrats Home Affairs spokesperson Alistair Carmichael said any party that's happy to support the laws is no defender of civil liberty. So what you can see here very clearly is the Greens and the Lib Dems are cranking up the pressure on Labour to oppose every item of Conservative government policy as we approach the next election.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it is. Now, we know in Scotland, Anas Sarwar is eager to base his entire electoral strategy on opposing the Conservatives, and that's why he's far more outspoken about the Conservative government than he is about the SNP government in Westminster. Yes, apart from, of course, the First Minister's questions, when even Anas has to say something critical of the SNP. But what's even so unfortunately, it looks like Starmer's following suit with this. And what's even more disappointing is the revelation that a Labour Party donor also donates funds to the Just Stop Oil group. Now, of course, what this means is it looks like Starmer is basing his North Sea oil and gas policy on the basis of his donors' opposition to it. And you can't do that. I mean, for God's sake, this is a very extremist protest group. So as a reminder to Keir Starmer, if he happens to be listening, 100,000 people are employed in the North Sea oil and gas industry. And already in Scotland, we have, as Mary said, the anti-industry Greens lobbying to stop the use of fossil fuels immediately, whatever the impact. And even their Holyrood government colleagues, the SNP, like Fergus Ewan, disagree with them on this. That's how absurd their stance is. Now, we know it's difficult enough for Labour to win a general election. I've been over the stats many times, how few Labour leaders have actually managed to win elections. But trust me, Keir Starmer, this is not going to happen. You will not win an election by taking Scottish Green policies from an openly anti-industry manifesto.
No, it's quite something, actually. And I said last week on the show that these groups, Just Stop Oil, are actually working with the government. That's the way. It's the same policy. The actual real policy that's against them is leave us the hell alone. But people who want to be left the hell alone don't go out in the street and block the streets, because they want to be left alone. So that's the paradox.
And they want to leave other people alone.
Well, yeah, and exactly. So this is the paradox of it. We've got this guy there. I saw the picture of him. He runs some energy business.
That's right.
Benefits from it. Green energy business. It's purely financial gain. Nothing about the planet at all. It's a scab. The planet is the planet is the MacGuffin, as it were. It's just the thing that people, the golden idol. It's not to do anything. The real transactions are going around between us, and people are saying, well, you shouldn't be doing that, shouldn't be doing that. It's nothing to do with what's up there. So it's just really shocking to see this kind of thing from Starmer kowtowing to this really quite extreme, well, of course, an extreme group to begin with.
Yep.
And, it was a thing today, some guy nearly run down some people, but it's going to end up with that. And then, of course, they're going to say, oh, but, this is terrible. We were run down. We're just trying to save the planet. And these other people are bad. And it's not a good situation. The police should be on top of this, and the government, or any government, shouldn't be pandering to these people.
Quite right, and this is true. And I cannot believe that Starmer has taken these two stances. I think it's extraordinarily short-sighted, and I think he's really jeopardising his own chances here. And so my message to him is exactly as his far more bold predecessor once said: you can't play politics with people's jobs. You can't.
Well, I'm not too sure though about how that will play with the nationalists, though, right? Nationalists, do they want to have? Maybe they're conflicted. It's our oil, yeah, but we don't want it.
Yeah,
it's like, well,
exactly.
It's our oil, but don't bring it out of the ground. That kind of thing. So I don't know if it's really going to resonate that well. Of course, for people who are working in the oil industry and so on, and they'll be like, no, of course, this is an issue. But for people who have been affected, nationalists who have been affected to some extent by green ideology, maybe it's not such a bad thing for them. So
possible.
It's difficult to say, but get your act together. Don't be doing this extreme nonsense anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
The whole point of Starmer is not to be extreme, it's to get the middle ground vote. That's what he's been doing, and at least his advisors have been telling him to do that, and he's been doing it. Certainly in Scotland, he's been able to manage to show that.
Yeah, indeed. But if he thinks that by backing disruptive protesters, he's somehow in touch with public opinion, he's off his head. Not a chance.
No,
absolutely nothing.
We'll see. I've got a denial on it. All right, very good. Thanks, Mary. You are coming up in just a second.
Okay, I can see we're very short of time, so I will try to make mine very quick. My Zoomer of the week are the meddling SNP and Green MSPs who introduced the minimum alcohol unit pricing in Scotland. As if it wasn't bad enough that people in Scotland are having to pay way over the odds for our alcohol. It's been predicted it's been about £270 million that we've had to pay extra over 4 years. A new report out today. Mark, do you have the...
Yes, I've got
the article. So there's a new report out today that says that the minimum unit pricing for the alcohol we've seen a 3% fall in the amount of alcohol being sold through off licenses and supermarkets, but there's been almost a 14% increase in sales of fortified wines such as Buckfast, Eldorado, Four Crown and such like. Because these fortified wines weren't affected by the minimum unit pricing. They were already sold at a price well above that. And as we all know, some of these drinks have some quite colourful names, such as Wreck the Hoose Juice and Commotion Lotion.
Okay.
Because people get off their heads drunk on these wines or whatever, and then they start causing all kinds of trouble. So basically, the minimum alcohol unit pricing has not worked. In fact, it's made things probably a lot worse.
Indeed.
It's easier for people to buy, it says, I'll just buy drugs instead.
That's exactly it. Exactly. It's classic whack-a-mole strategy. You hammer one thing and 3 other things jump up. It's just appalling legislation, ill-conceived from the start, and it's deadly also because it has led to more people taking drugs, which they're not used to taking, and it's killed people. Scotland's drug deaths are a blight on this nation, and I firmly believe that, at least in part, caused by the minimum unit alcohol pricing. I think it's an utter scandal. I mean that.
Yeah, it's terrible. Right, okay, Mary. No, sorry, it's David. Actually, you've got to choose.
I'll choose. Right, okay. Well, I'll give Keir Starmer a swerve this week because we're still kind of relying on him, but he needs to sharpen up his act. And Annie with the strawberries, she's too inconsequential. This minimum unit price of alcohol is far, far too serious for me not to see. You are the Zoomer of the week. Anyone who is responsible for this, it's a disgrace. You should be ashamed of yourself. So you are the Zoomers of the week.
All right, okay. I really thought I would have won that one there with the strawberry.
Yeah, I have to say, as a real Zoomer.
The thing is this,
I think Keir would have. Keir would needs to take heed. If we should have given him the award, we could send it to him in the post. We actually.
Well, if his guarantee was next transgression, and that's exactly what we'll do.
Right. Okay. Well, it's still plenty of time till the next election, and anyway, perhaps it's a trial balloon, to see if that's going to happen. So, anyway, good result there for you, Mary. Surprising.
Thank you.
Anyway, well, thank you for being with us on the show tonight. I think I have. Oops, sorry. Okay. Thank you for being with us on the show tonight.
Is it me up again? Sorry, I'm too busy reading the comments.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments tonight.
Thanks, everyone. Terrific comments as usual. Absolutely brilliant. Well done, everyone. Fantastic.
Right. And let me see what we've got. I'll leave you for the thought of the week. Okay, I read this from the Daily Record journalist Paul Hutchian here. He says, really depressing that relations are so low between the Scottish and UK governments. They can't even work on recycling scheme together. Devolution was never supposed to be like this.
Yeah.
Of course, devolution was never supposed to be like this, but it was always going to end up like this.
Absolutely right.
It's time to turn back the clock on the failed devolution experiment. Much more on that in the next few weeks. Oh, I need to give you a little bit heads up. We won't be here next week. It's going to be Mary's birthday next Wednesday.
Yay.
We are taking a day off, or a few days off for a break. And so we will see you again in 2 weeks' time.
June 14th.
June 14th. All right. So thank you for being with us tonight. We'll see you back.
Thanks, everybody. See you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. I'm way off my section. All right. Okay. And closing.
Good night.